Welcome to What's Your Story podcast. I'm your host, Matt Story. On this pod, I sit down with people of color leaders to understand how they've been able to use their superpowers to make an impact on our world. And I do it one story at a time. My guest on the pod this week is a well-being founder that helps people and teams transform their performance and take control of their time by prioritizing their health. And I'm really looking forward to hearing more about her story. So please welcome Dilan Gomih to the show.
Matt, thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you for jumping on the mic. I was excited about this and being able to dive in on your story. But before we do that, I want to take a step back and maybe you could share a story with us or give us a glimpse into what little Dilan may have been like.
You know, not too long ago, I did ask my mom like this exact question. Mm-hmm. Like I was like, tell me about a little bit of me. So little Dilan was apparently very serious, like very, very focused on getting things done. Apparently when I was younger, I had no problem saying like, I can't run around right now. I cannot manage to run around. My mom said I would use like the language. I cannot manage to do this at this time. I was apparently like very conscious of getting stuff done. So I'm the last of four, and she said that I was the only one that she didn't have to tell to go do my homework. But I think I realized over time like why that was the case. Kids pick up on things like really early when they're little. So
why was that the case?
So I'm the youngest of four, and there's big age gaps in between us. So I think first and foremost, there's an element of kind of being raised with people that were older than me anyway. So like picking up on things a lot faster. So I was like, okay, if they're being told this, then this is also what I have to start doing too. So it was like, they're getting told to be their homework. And I'm like, all right, I want to please. I also want to crush it too. So before mom says anything, I'm just going to try and get it done. Yeah. And if I like fast forward through like elements of my corporate career, I'm like, oh, this tracks. This tracks for sure. And then when you say little Dilan, the other thing that most people don't know, and you wouldn't be able to tell because we're on a screen together, is little Dilan was literally in stature incredibly tiny. But thankfully that changed because I'm about 5'7" now. So I was like, little Dilan, shut up.
Nice. I'm curious, did Lil Dilan have an idea of what you wanted to be when you grew up? Was there like a dream profession, dream role?
Yeah, so little Dilan definitely was incredibly impacted by her parents for sure. So my dad is a urologist, and I just remember, you know, they didn't really they shared a lot with us like over time about like what they did. So I'd remember sitting with my dad and he'd explain like what he was doing and why he was doing it, why he cared so much about his patients. And I was like, Dad, what are you doing on a Saturday? And he was like, I'm, you know, thinking about how I can be better for making people healthy. So like that really attracted us. You know, I want to be a doctor like my dad. Yeah. And my mom is a lawyer now. She's an attorney now, and she particularly focuses on cases around like mental health. So she's a public defender for mental health, but things that people would not know. Almost after every single kid, she went back and got another degree. So after my oldest brother, I said I'm the youngest of four. After my oldest brother, she went back and she got a master's. After my sister, she went back and she got her MBA. And when I was about 9, my mom went back to law school. And I remember being in the car with her and like listening, and here's the kicker I should tell you. She was 47 when she went back to law school. So there's me in the car like listening to my mom kind of saying things back to her. She's still learning, and I'm like, if this is what mom does constantly, I'm like, she's also thinking about how to be helpful, how to keep being of service. I was like, you know what? I want to be a lawyer. So like, I think I was incredibly influenced originally by like, you know, this is what dad does, this is what lawyer, like my mom does. People will also joke though, because once you find out in Nigerian, well, they're like, well, that tracks. Got a doctor on one side, a lawyer on the other side. Like, who's the engineer in the family? My brother. But like, so little Dilan was, I would argue, less influenced by the culture, very much so by those two humans.
It probably set you on a pretty good trajectory. You graduated from Yale, you went to Harvard Business School, but I'm curious beyond the badge value, what did you take away or learn from those experiences that still sits with you today?
Pretty early on. I remember like people asking kind of like what drew me to Yale in particular more than anything. And there is this huge element of, even when I think about like my friends then and my friend group now, I've always been extremely drawn to people that are themselves and the ability to simply just be myself. I think especially when you leave home, like when you leave like the community and the culture that you were raised in. And for context, like I had an extremely like Nigerian upbringing, even though I was in the middle of Illinois. And the reason why my parents even, raised us in Illinois was because they went to where they knew other Nigerians. So I was, grew up still very much so embedded within my culture. When you leave and you go to somewhere like New Haven, Connecticut, there's also this kind of rediscovery of like, who are you? Who are your people? Especially a college and a campus like that, where there's a huge opportunity around like intellectual curiosity, but then there's other things that they're just going to meet people that aren't your people. And I learned really, really quickly that when you don't have your family, when you don't have your community, find your people. And I think that stuck with me throughout my career. That stuck with me at HBS as well. And then even just like this ongoing element around community and being a resource for your community too. So I think those two things were like, even if I think about my time at HBS and being long out of HBS as well, how like there's this shift between not just getting the benefit of being part of a group, but also like this incredible and immense opportunity that I have now to be helpful to others as a result of the experiences that I've been through.
Well, it sounds like that's a consistent thread that you carry from your parents, where you saw, even though they had different professions, they were both helping people. And that really was a formative, it kind of imprinted on you as like, that's what we do in this family, or that's what we do in this community. And you've even carried that through in all the things that you've been able to do. But you describe yourself as a well-being founder, which I thought was amazing. But I'm curious, just like initially, how did you develop this fitness bug? Like, how did you how did you get the, if you're a runner, you call it a runner's high. If you're into fitness, like what was it that got you as kind of into it to begin with before you even started to do even more with it?
My love of fitness started on a Wall Street trading floor, which sounds odd to just about anyone that I will meet. But I'll just kind of paint this picture for you of, me, young woman of color, landing on a Wall Street trading floor, and there's definitely like full stop period, going to be an excellent, and work my tail off to absolutely show people that I'm capable, I belong there. Sprinting 80 to 90 hours a week, and when that's the nature of your job, it's really easy to think I don't have time for anything else. And I distinctly remember a colleague basically dragging me to one of these spin classes, one of these boutique spin classes in New York, called Flywheel. And I was like, these bikes do not move. Yes, I'm Nigerian, but I did grow up in the Midwest. When we get on bikes, these bikes move. They move forward, in fact. So you would like me to pedal in place with you for 45 minutes, madam, and in a dark dungeon. So I've already been inside for how many hours? And you want me to stay seated with you for an additional 45 minutes in a dark room? Okay, great. Fine. I went with her. And lo and behold, we kind of know how this story ends. I walk out of this class being one of these people that's waving a towel around the head, going woo. I'm not a woo person, but I became one that day. And most importantly, feeling better. And I still had to go back to work. But the energy and literally how I felt re-emerging back into the trading floor was something that I had never experienced in that way before. And the connection between that, call it endorphin rush, call it that release of tightness in my chest, and what I had to do after was something that I couldn't let go of. And I have to give the context around the fact that I was somebody who grew up playing sports. Like, I was an athlete my entire life. Sure, by nature, being Nigerian, I was fast. I'm a great sprinter. But my sport, and that did bode well for tiny Dylan, was I was a figure skater. So I grew up being somebody that was already used to being up before sunup and training for hours, going back to a rink, after school, constantly having this flywheel of around discipline around my body, discipline around my mind. This was the concept of sport, and fitness for sport was something that I'd already had. But the concept of fitness being something for me, this time, this experience on Wall Street very early on in my career was where I discovered that when I incorporated movement into my life, it made my mind better. Yeah. When I started my day like that, yes, at 5 a.m. or before that with movement, how I approached the rest of my day went better. When I moved during the day, that was the extra unlock. Like when I found the business justification for movement, by that I mean, you're supposed to go get coffee with people, you're supposed to go catch up with people intraday anyway, but when you say, can we go get a walk? Mm-hmm. Go on a walk and catch up? These little insights, not just around movement, but then also kind of how I connected that to my emotions, how I connected this to how I stayed in the game, unlocked so much for me that I didn't want to keep it to myself. But your question was kind of how did I get the fitness bug? It was in the midst of sprinting through 80 to 90 hour weeks and trying to figure out how do I get my mind right, and it actually started with getting my body right.
Take me down that journey though, because eventually it wasn't just a you thing, it eventually became, again, a community thing. If I can help people with this, and given your track record, given what you had done, given where you were already in this like fast moving pace, moving probably up and to the right, getting recognized, delivering great results. But then you decide to pivot and to really chase this passion. So like, what was the unlock for you that like this decision makes sense? And, you know, if somebody were listening, then they may be sitting and going through a similar type of passage of, hey, am I following the right journey, the right path? How would you advise based on what you ultimately decided to do?
The unlock typically happens in baby steps. And I say this to people all the time. The big leaps are results of little steps. And this first little unlock for me was like, okay, I don't want to keep this to myself. I know that every time I do this, I feel great. And I remember starting to bring other people to class with me. And these were people that were also working on Wall Street in high performance roles. And I was like, you know what I need to do? When I'm saying that it really translates to higher performance, I should teach this. So I didn't leave my job. I kept working on Wall Street, but I actually started teaching the same cycling class, the same class in a spin dungeon at Flywheel. I started teaching something like 7 to 10 classes on top of my full-time job. So first and foremost, there is this element of when I'm saying it unlocks your capacity and unlocks your time, I continued working on the trading floor while I was working at Flywheel Sports, teaching 7 to 10 classes. That's like being able to do two things at the same time. And why? Truly because it brought me joy. And I wanted to share that joy with other people. But when I took a step back, and this was phase 2, was me realizing this isn't just a me thing. This isn't even just like my colleagues thing. There's something in the workplace that makes it such that people have to make a trade-off between high performance and their health. If you take 10 minutes to take a step off the trading floor, it's done with fear because it's like I'm not being productive, as opposed to we all know that, you know what, sometimes when you take that 5-minute walk around the block, when you clear your head, you somehow show back to work better. Yeah. These little things that we just can't do and haven't been able to bring into the workplace as a whole, despite the ongoing demand for higher performance. So this was the first time that, despite me already being a contrarian to Nigerian culture because I didn't have a secondary degree, that I was like, nobody can tell me what the business of fitness and wellness is. I'd asked a lot of different ways. And this curiosity that I hadn't gotten a satisfying answer to was actually why I went to HBS. Like, this was what made me say, if I don't have the answers, I will go learn the business of fitness. I will figure out how to be of greatest service to this world possible. If I don't have something, let me go get that thing so that way I can figure out how to scale the impact. So after I went to Harvard Business School, there's this element of each of my zigzags or each of my movements were driven by where is the best place for me to learn and where's the best place for me to combine my expertise. So when I thought about, okay, the fitness industry, now that I got this understanding of there's brick and mortar, there's digital, there's kind of this element of fitness, nutrition, behavior change, each place that I went was driven by here's what I can bring, but here's what I need to learn. Along the way, I never stopped teaching. I've always been an instructor. I continue to teach today because I never wanted to lose sight of, well, why am I doing this? Yeah. So those were kind of the things that align me, where it's like on the corporate side or from the top-down piece, which is what do I need to learn? And then the bottom-up piece is like, who is it for? And then my company today, Dilagence, which, yes, is a play on my name, but because, you know, once you see that and that URL is free, like, how can you not? How can you not?
I love a good play. As last name Story, I love a good play on the name.
Right. Like this opportunity. slam dunk. I didn't play basketball, but I dunk on that, right? So it is a play on my name. But the word diligence, in its true definition, means steady, energetic, and persistent effort, which is everything that you need to be a leader in the workplace. But for health, for fitness, for getting your mind right, it's also everything that you need to build a healthy practice in your life.
Yeah.
So my companies today, Dilagence, both partners with larger organizations to both develop their programming, their overall organizational strategy and approach to well-being, but then also deliver on the content, help people operationalize health and fitness as a performance strategy in their workday, both so they get the performance and the best out of their lives, but also so the organizations also finally start to see performance and ROI on what they're heavily investing in, which is employee wellness. You invest, you want ROI, like let's bring those two things together.
Exactly. So if I was someone that was, okay, I buy what you're selling, I think you're onto something, but I got a busy job, I have busy family commitments. To your point, I don't have time for fitness or movement or what have you. What would be your advice to that person? How do they take that first small step?
Mm-hmm. The first thing that I would highlight is a lot of times people think about movement or fitness as a chore. So they think that fitness means, oh, that means I have to go to the gym. That means that I have to go on a run. That means that in order to incorporate movement, it has to be some kind of thing, as opposed to what movement or physical activity in its literal definition is any voluntary movement initiated by your muscles that expends energy. So that means that if you go home and you're running after your kid for like 5 to 10 minutes, guess what? You just did cardio. If you play pick me up with your 5-year-old 10 times, guess what? You just did a squat clean. And people might laugh, but you know what? Quite literally, Matt, how much does a 5-year-old weigh?
30 pounds.
30 pounds. Yeah. You are lifting a 30-pound weight that is smiling at you.
Yeah.
So for that person that says, I don't have time, I'll say, quick pause. I promise you, in your everyday life, you're probably doing more than you think. And with those little things, we're just going to add on little tweaks. You have a dog that you love, you're going to walk your dog. Can you add 5 minutes to walking your dog? You always kind of love listening to your favorite podcast. Could you maybe just walk around and listen to your favorite podcast? You have a phone call. Could you just stand up and do a little pace while you're on that call? There's always the little things that you can add on. And you know, there's so many people I can cite in the culture that'll say something like, I hate exercise, but I love praise dancing. I'm like, same thing.
Yeah.
Just because it's joyful doesn't mean that it's not exercise.
You're preaching to the choir. I'm really pushing, again, because I'm always looking for like what's not out there. And when you go on TikTok, you go on Instagram, you see a lot of workout videos, but it's always in the gym, super, influencer based. Mm-hmm. But what I don't see is the people that have the lifestyle that I have talking about the things you just talked about. And I don't see people saying that like, hey, this is how you approach it and this is how you could go about it. And what I found in my own fitness journey is like dedicating to it. Yes, there are physical benefits to consistent movement, consistent fitness. But what it actually does for me, it actually trains my brain. And it's actually putting me in this idea of like, these are the behaviors, this is the type of stuff I do. So I am one of those crazy people that gets up at 4:30 to work out. But if I can do that and literally check that off the box, there's really not much else I can't do in the day. And so I'm curious, how have you seen, or how do you even teach people like that larger halo effect? Because as you talk about, it's not just about the fitness side, but it actually improves your performance more holistically.
100%. And like what you highlight, this one phrasing is like, if I can do this, then I can do that. And that is why I'm so always focused on like, what is the little step? Like I always share this one story of like one of my favorite unlocks, which was like, again, somebody actually, sometimes pets are like the easiest ways to kind of like open up the gateway. Mm-hmm. But somebody who told me they didn't have a single minute to find time for themselves. And we looked at their day, and their day actually started something like 6:15. And their unlock was just waking up 15 minutes earlier so they could go walk their dog. Mm-hmm. And it's like, oh, if I've got 15 minutes here, over time it became, actually, then I can fit this in here. And oh, now I can actually figure out how to do a run now. So it's that understanding of like, I already checked the box, like I did something. and the acknowledgement of it as a goal versus a lot of people will just kind of brush it off. And it's like, no. We too often think about doing the little things. Like if we have a scale of zeros over here and 100s over here, like I'm trying to put it within the camera, it's like when we do the little things, we try to associate it with the zero side as opposed to it being kind of like an exponential unlock.
Yeah.
And what you said about like the crazy 4:30 a.m., that's not crazy to me. You figured out exactly how it works for you. Mm-hmm. And if somebody's, it's so funny, if somebody says to me, oh man, I really feel better every time I work out. I just don't know why that is. And I'm like, first and foremost, give yourself credit for doing it. That's why you feel good, because you hit a goal. Secondly, there's science behind it. So there's totally science behind it. Like working out actually does bring you joy. And every time that you move, it's increasing blood circulation, which gets oxygen to your brain. And when you get your oxygen is in your brain is thinking better. So there is a thing. So just the takeaway being, don't discount the little things, because it's really the little things that pay off for you over time. And
it's because of the compounding effect. Because just like your bank account, if you save a little bit for a long amount of time, that little bit becomes a lot. It's the same thing in fitness. It's the same thing in productivity. I don't have to go 0 to 100 on everything. I literally get it's my wife makes fun of me. So I like to give like subtle hints in the house. So I renamed our internet Wi-Fi to 1% better every day. So that every time someone gets on to see the internet, I want the family and anybody that comes to visit to see that. Because like that's what we're trying to do. Just if I can get 1% better today, 1% better tomorrow, it's like, where am I going to end up a year from now, 10 years from now, et cetera. So I'm a firm believer in that.
The other thing that I hear a lot, which is you'll also hear people say something along the lines of, oh, I wish I'd started sooner when it comes to their finances. Like when they realize like, oh, if I'd been investing this way, or if I'd been saving a little bit like this over the last 15, 20 years, my bank account would have been so much bigger. And your health is the exact same way. And I will go ahead and like step onto the soapbox now. Usually people say I'm stepping off the soapbox and they'll say, no, I'm just gonna let you know I'm getting on it. Hello, we're here. Which is, yes, there's this element of genetics, but so much of what is really important when it comes to elongating our health span, not our lifespan, not how long we live, but our health span, how long we productively, healthily, joyfully live and do the things that we enjoy, can be attributed to the preventative things that we do today that do not cost money. They are things like break up the 10 to 12 hours a day that you are sitting at your desk. Stand up when you're on the phone, go take a walk. Consider how you are fueling your body, what you are putting into it. And I say this in a very careful way. When I talk about the importance of sleep, I mean, do whatever you can to get the incremental sleep. Like I'm not gonna say, you gotta get to 8 to 9 hours, because that's not gonna be realistic for anybody in a crazy high performing well, but eat well, move, sleep. Those 3 things are so critical to how you can start to invest little bits today to make it so in your 70s and your 80s, you aren't looking back and thinking, oh man, I wish that I'd done the little things along the way. Start the little things today.
I'm gonna switch to the brand of Dilan for a second and ask you, what is your superpower?
My superpower is very much so that I'm good at igniting people. I'm really good at understanding what's that little thing that will help people make the tweak in their life that makes it so they actually don't need me. And the most important thing is that I love that I do the work that I do with joy. Like, I just truly don't believe that we are on this world to be miserable. And when people are trying to make change, it's difficult. And I don't like making anything harder than it has to be. So applying the lens of joy and helping people to understand that the changes that you want to make in your life can be more digestible and don't have to be in conflict with things that you like, that is my sweet spot.
Not only did you give me your superpower, but you also gave me where your Zen zone is and like where you're firing on that superpower in the most ideal place, it sounds like. So have you had a mama we made it moment?
You know, I've had a few over time. That's the thing. So am I allowed to call it like a mama we're doing it? Like mama we're doing the thing moment?
Yeah.
I think my simple acknowledgement of I have had a lot of joys. I've had a lot of highlights on this journey, but there's also just the acknowledgement that we're done. We're not done. We're kind of just, we're still at the beginning. But I'm going to give one that came to mind like right away. Like it just kind of popped into my brain, and I still remember, graduating from HBS, which was definitely a moment of pride for like me and my family. And I gave my parents my diploma. Like there's just like kind of like this like my name is on it, but yours might as well be on here too.
Yeah.
A huge element for me is, taking that step to actually become an entrepreneur was something that, my parents had believed in me, like, and other people like kind of highlighted to me that I had this vision and had something I wanted to build and saw it before I did, and actually doing it. And I actually kind of have, one of the first things that has like my logo on it next to me, but it's like, we're building something. Yeah. And there's then these like moments of pride along the way, but I'm kind of periodically like look up and have these moments of pride and say we're not done yet.
I do want to double click on the merch though, because I'm a firm believer in like, you look good, you play good, you feel good. And I think that a lot of times, and I'm as guilty of this as much because I'm a sneakerhead, I'm all about Nike, and I'll wear that logo with so much pride. You would think they were paying me, but they're not. And I think for those with a business, those with a product, those with like, get your merch and rock it and wear it everywhere so that people know you're doing something. Because I think we can sometimes forget that like the relationships you have on a one-to-one basis day to day, that's truly where you're building that brand, both your personal and whatever company, organization you're building. And it's something that's so simple. Like you literally put your logo on a sweatshirt, put on a hat, put on a backpack, whatever, and just rock it and be so proud of it that, wear it every day if you want to. So I just, you showed me that, and I've been thinking about this. I took it as the chance to emphasize that because I don't think a lot of people, especially founders, really realize that like, the blood, sweat, and tears that go into those organizations, you earned it. So go for it.
And while that was in case you're only listening to this as opposed to watching this, I just put on my apparel to highlight and underscore Mr. Story's point.
There we go. All right. Well, I'm going to close out and hopefully we can have a little bit more fun. When they turn this amazing life story into a movie, who would you want to play you on the big screen?
I'm going to start with Kerry Washington. Okay. And the reason why is because I already call myself Nigerian Olivia Pope. So it just kind of, this just tracks.
It works.
It just tracks. I love her. And then if we want to kind of do like the overtime version as well, and clearly I'm just living in Shondaland as well, like Viola Davis is as well. Like either of these two queens, I'd be honored beyond measure to have them involved in any manner, shape, or form.
That's great. What song would play in your trailer?
I mean, I'll just tell you what came to mind. The Freedom came to mind right now, for sure. And I think even in the midst of this conversation, I have been like reflecting on this element of there are so many ways to do things, to just pursue the trodden path. And in addition to having this vision around like health and high performance that I'd wanted to bring to bear probably 2 years before I actually did, actually taking the bet to do it in my way and believing in my capacity to do that was ultimate freedom for sure. So and then also if Beyonce wants to make an appearance in the movie too, right? I mean, how can I not?
Exactly. So I'm a huge fan of stories. It's why I do the podcast. Obviously my last name doesn't hurt. But for you, if there were 3 people and you could sit with them, they could be with us, they could have passed on and hear their story firsthand, who would be your 3?
First one is my dad's mom. So I never had the opportunity to meet her. A little bit of quick backstory about like me and my family is we have an interfaith household. My mom is Christian. My dad is Muslim. I actually grew up going to Jewish community camp camps for summer. So we had a family and a household with like a lot of openness and understanding of different cultures, different faiths. And one of the reasons for that is I'll always remember the story of my mom going to visit my dad for the first time in his village. And a lot of people were pressuring her to go to the mosque with them. And my dad's mom standing up and saying, nope, she has to go to church in the morning. And always being an advocate for the fact that like my mom came from a different village, came from a different faith, and from everything that I've heard about her, she, like way before her time in our family, was kind of like really such a beacon of tolerance and kindness and joy. And one of my names is for her. So I would have loved to meet her. As of right now, particularly because I'm obsessed with this podcast, Trevor Noah, the Wait What podcast, like just obsessed. And Oprah. You had your Oprah moment at the beginning. I was like already nodding ahead. Like, yeah, can we just sit down? Like, I would like to give away cars as well, but I just want to spend 5 minutes with you too.
Who is someone, and you've already given me one of these, but if you have another one, who is someone that has an amazing story that I should have on the podcast, but with one caveat, it has to be someone you can help me get on?
Ooh! As in you want... Okay, got it. Okay. I am thinking about this absolutely living legend dynamo of a human being who has just been such a trailblazer in the discipline of DEI, who just, even having 10 minutes to talk to her about her experience in building the discipline of DEI and how she has navigated literally like building it into the world and helping it to become the foundation of a movement and something that we're like still fighting for, and hearing her stories, I think would be absolutely incredible. Is there anything I didn't ask that you want to share, or anything you want to ask me? What is your favorite health ritual? Like your every single day, like if you don't do this thing, then you feel like your day is not like at peak performance. Yeah, it's going to sound crazy because I do this, but I have to have some form of movement in the beginning of the day. And on those days where either I can't fit it in or, schedules don't work out, I can feel the difference. And it's also because I programmed my body to operate and to feel that way. But, whether that's a run, that's a lift, that's a yoga, that's stretching, a walk, whatever it is, I have to get it in first part of the day. And even when I do it, let's say I do it in the afternoon, it doesn't feel the same. And so that would be the one. And people think I'm crazy because at this point I've worked out, or I've had movement, I should say 230 or so plus days in a row. Yes. And I don't plan on breaking that streak anytime soon. So yeah, that would be mine. Do you move with your kids? Yes. Okay. So usually on the weekend though, because they're not up when I do it during the week. But we actually, it's interesting. So our family trainer, she actually hosts a family friendly workout on Saturdays. And so we all go as a family. Our littlest one, 5-year-old, does the warm up, and then she gets tired of it and does the iPad. But yeah, we definitely try to include, and it's also funny just to see, because she's really into gymnastics right now. And, it's like, to your point, kids pick up on that stuff. So the fact that, I'm going out to the gym, I'm going out to do the run, like, it's like, it becomes, that's what we do in this family. Yeah. So yeah. Reason why I ask is I've been thinking a lot around the joy of movement, and the joy of movement that we particularly have as like children that some of us lose over time. So like, I am just so grateful for models like you that show like, hey, this is what daddy does to get his mind and his body right. And, kids pick up on that stuff. So yeah, I love that. 100%. That's so cool. So before I let you go, if people want to follow your story, they want to see what you're up to, where should I send them? Yeah. So you can absolutely find me on my website, dilagence.com. That's dilagence.com. As well as on LinkedIn. And then, if you want to make sure that this work is at an upcoming offsite or event or conference, please absolutely feel free to connect with your head of HR or whoever your team leader is that is organizing an upcoming offset or speaking event. And I'd be happy to to be there.
Awesome. Well, thank you for taking the time. Thank you for sharing your story transparently and authentically. It really means a lot, and just appreciate it.
Thank you for having me and telling me to put on my merch.
Yes, indeed. I really enjoyed my conversation with Dilan. I feel like she definitely thinks about the world of fitness and how it has impact beyond just the physical benefits and strengths that it gives you, and that are really aligned with how I think about fitness and the role it plays in my life. But there were three things that came away from our conversation. I think first is really her story shows the power of family and their ability to influence what you think is possible. You saw how she talked about her parents. She talked about how growing up and just how they exposed her to what they were doing and how it really showed her what she could do in her own journey. And really, I think set her on a really fast-paced trajectory in what she would go on to do in her journey. And then the second thing, and again, sometimes we think about working out or getting any type of movement or fitness in our lives as something that is taking away from other things. And, it's kind of like I have to give and take, but really, thinking about how fitness gives you more capacity and it gives you more time because you have more energy. And I think it's an equation that will always pay out. I don't think I've ever had a workout where I was just like, you know what, I hate that I did that workout. There's definitely times when I didn't work out where I regretted it, but I think her point about really being able to increase your capacity through fitness is just a great reminder. And then lastly, as you think forward and we think about our future selves and just recognizing that if we eat well, we move well, and we sleep well, our future self is just going to be more happy with us. And I think what is embedded in that is you don't necessarily need to worry about your comparison either with yourself or with others, but just taking it a day at a time and making those micro investments and just seeing how in the future, how that pays out. Until next time, I encourage you, as always, to continue to share your story. It's so important, not only for you, but for others to hear your story. And if you have any feedback or any comments about any of the podcasts, feel free to reach out to me. You can reach me at all of the social channels at Matt E. Story, or you can go to my website, www.mattestory.com.